The countdown is on to the election, and we're tracking your voice, your vote. With 85 days to go until Election Day, all eyes are on presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and who he will pick as his running mate. The campaign year has seen an increased speculation and lobbying for the position by potential candidates. Former Obama campaign chief strategist David Axelrod writing on Twitter, "I can't remember any VP selection process where so much Oppo research has been dumped. If I were Joe Biden looking for a good and loyal partner, that should be a source of concern." And as we've seen in past years, the pick of a number 2 on the ticket can send a strong signal to voters about what the campaign and the party stand for. Take a look here.
The American people have a message for the tax raisers, and that message is this: your time has passed.
200 years from now, Americans will say of our labors that this nation and this earth were healed by people they never even knew.
I guess a small town mayor is sort of like a community organizer, except that you have actual responsibilities.
These times require more than a good soldier. They require a wise leader. A leader who can change the change that everybody knows we need.
And Biden has guaranteed he will choose a woman, making whomever is the third woman to ever be nominated as vice president on a major party ticket. So making history there. So who will it be? Joining me now with a closer look, ABC News political director Rick KLEIN, Amanda Renteria, Code for America CEO and former national political director on Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, and associate professor of political science and African American studies at Purdue University, Dr. Nadia Brown. Welcome to you all. We appreciate you being here. First, I want to hear from each one of you. Rapid fire. Who do you think Joe Biden picks? Nadia, let's start with you.
Oh, wow. I was really hoping that Stacey Abrams would be at this point. But right now, it looks like she's fallen out of the top contenders. So I'm really hoping that it's someone who shares some of the same qualities that Abrams had.
And Amanda, what about you?
You know, I think for Vice President Biden, relationships and the relationships he's had with people for a period of time really matter in this case. I suspect Ambassador Rice is at the running, but it's a risk in terms of she's never run for elected office, but she's a tough woman, and I'm sure she could handle herself on the stage.
And Rick, where do the chips fall on this one?
I think Biden's heart is coming toward Susan Rice, but his head can't get around Kamala Harris as the pick that flat out makes the most sense. I think from the beginning of the process, she is probably the biggest do no harm pick, the person that you can put out there and know that you can trust to do everything and handle everything and put the focus back on President Trump, which is where Joe Biden wants it to be. All
right. So, Rick, we'll stay with you for a moment. What does Biden need to accomplish with this pick? Was it smart of him to pick a woman? I think people were surprised he picked a woman right out of the gate early on. What can she make up for that he might lack?
It was an unprecedented vow early in the process, before he'd even really locked down the nomination, as he was closing in on it, to say, I'll pick a woman. It boxed him in some ways, but I think recognizing where the weaknesses were in his candidacy through the primaries and the reality of the nation, the reality of the Democratic Party, the feeling that it was an important signal to send from the beginning. And I think, look, he has a chance to make some history here, not only if he selects a woman, as is expected, but if he chooses a woman of color, an African-American woman in particular. There's a lot that can get done. Clearly, he needs to send a signal that he gets it, he understands where the party and the country are, and also that he has a lieutenant that could step in and take over the presidency if necessary. And
Amanda, you've been on the other side of a campaign like this one before. We mentioned 2016 with Hillary Clinton. What are some of the top considerations that the Biden camp is now going through right now?
Well, this is the biggest most important relationship for the presidential candidate at this moment in time. It's not just about how are you gonna be on the campaign together, how are you gonna govern together, but there's this whole apparatus around the campaign leadership. Can you bring the two families together? Can you really enhance all the aspects of the campaign, whether that's the political department or whether that's the organizing department? or whether that highlights certain policies that are really important. And so it really does reverberate throughout the campaign. And it's also an exciting time because it adds a new energy to the entire conversation.
And Nadia, there's been some debate in the Democratic Party about whether to win over more voters, or you could win more voters by leaning moderately versus leaning progressively. We know Biden is pretty moderate himself. So which way do you think this could swing?
Well, I'm hoping that it swings towards a more progressive branch of the Democratic Party, primarily because this election will be lost or won on turnout. And if Biden and the Democrats are hoping to turn out new voters, voters that did not turn out for Hillary Clinton in 2016, they need to energize people that are the base. So African Americans, Latinx voters, those that stayed home. Stop trying to move to the right or to the moderate group, and instead try to get those that are already going to have to face an uphill battle to voting, standing in long lines, having their ballots be questioned. We really need a VP who's going to enthusiastically get the base out there, people that have stayed home in the past.
And Nadia, who do you think could fit that bill?
I think
you mentioned it earlier on. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think it's a woman of color. I do have some reservations about Kamala or Susan Rice. I do want this candidate, this VP pick, to be someone who is shown to mobilize voters. As we know, we have the option of having Kamala presidency, and primary voters said that they did not want her at the top of the ticket. So I'm a little concerned to think if people would like to see her at the bottom of the ticket, will they still turn out as enthusiastic for her? And also, right, we know that Susan Rice has never sat herself for an election. So she's a little bit of an unknown quantity about what she would do about turning out voters and getting people to be energized and enthusiastic about this ticket.
Yeah, maybe a bit of a wild card there. And Rick, there has been an unusual amount of jockeying for this position, as we heard David Axelrod say, over the past few months. And why do you think this could be? How does this affect Biden's choice?
I think in a COVID-19 environment where you don't have the same opportunity for face-to-face meetings, for trial runs out on the campaign trail, there's been a remarkable amount of public lobbying. So many of these women out themselves talking about why they think they would make strong running mates. That's not usually how it happens. I do wonder if it's going to change the way the Veep Stakes takes place. I also think, and having talked to some of the women on the list and people around them, they feel like because of the history-making aspect of this, these are all ambitious women that have put themselves forward, and that if someone else isn't going to speak for them, they need to speak for themselves. And maybe that is a refreshing piece of honesty in politics, that they're able to talk about themselves in that way. And as for the oppo that David Axelrod talks about, it was going to come out one way or the other. It's part of the game. And I think if they can't stand that kind of scrutiny, then they probably wouldn't make a good spot on the ticket.
So you don't see this as anomalous. So, Amanda, how important is it for the voters to feel energized by this pick? And I have to add to that, we heard Jill Biden talking about how important the chemistry is between whoever he picks and himself, and how important that was with him and President Obama. How does that factor in when he starts to choose his pick, and how energized will the nation be moving forward by whomever he chooses?
You know, that's the part that is the trick. How do you make sure that it's a good match, and how do you make sure not only does it help you in the campaign in order to broaden base, in order to bring in energy, but it's also how are you going to govern together, particularly at this moment in time. And people see that. People see the relationship. They see how it's going to work. And it really does, if you pick the right person, enhance that vision. But listen, I think there's a lot of folks on the ticket that make a really interesting pair with Biden. And I do think it becomes a little bit more of a fun part of the campaign, too, because you get to offload some of that energy. You're in it together. And I'm looking forward to not just that naming, but really seeing the pair come out as the face of the Democratic Party.
And we are in a moment, as you mentioned. And Nadia, Biden has said he will only choose a woman as his vice presidential candidate, as we mentioned, and most of those being vetted are women of color. In this moment, how important is it to you? How important is it writ large that he nominates a woman, and particularly a woman of color? Is there concern that that woman vice presidential candidate could give some voters pause? Are we beyond that?
Right. No, we're definitely not beyond this, right? I think one thing we know will happen for certain is that there will be sexist attacks lobbied at this woman. And particularly if she's a woman of color, there will be some racist vitriol that will come her way. That's unmistakable. We'll have that happen. But I think this is the right time for this to happen in this country. We see this happening in the streets, right? This is the most sustained protest that we've seen. This is the largest number of protests we've ever had in American history. In comparison, right, to the civil rights movement, where thousands of people showed up, protests for Black Lives Matter now have been millions of people showing up, sustained since the end of May. So this is the right time. The country is paying attention to systemic racism and all its ills and implications. Biden has the real opportunity to make change here, to not just pick someone to symbolically speak to racial injustice and the politics that people of color face, but someone who is on the front end of having to change the substantive policies that are enacted in this country around race and race-based injustices.
And Rick, the Democratic National Convention begins 1 week from today. It's hard to believe, but this is the first time, as we know, the conventions will be held virtually. Any preview of what that's going to look like? And can these conventions actually garner momentum if on a virtual platform and not being held in person?
It's going to be a huge test because we've literally never seen anything like it. No one is going to really physically be there in a location in either Milwaukee or Charlotte/Jacksonville, as the Republicans were planning for a week later. Both parties are going to aggressively program the primetime hours and hope to get an audience at home that is tuning in. But all the pageantry, all of the typical machinations that you're tuned in to watch around a convention, they'll be gone. And it really will be speeches and videos and sustained messaging. Both parties want to take advantage of that, but frankly speaking, no one really knows what to expect in terms of how the public is going to consume this information and ultimately use it to determine votes.
Rick, thank you so much, and Nadia, and also to Amanda as well. We appreciate your time, and of course, we're going to stay tuned to see who Joe Biden picks as his running mate. We appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.